Hello, everyone, and thank you for looking at our video. Today, Dr. Robert Gordon and I will be presenting on applying artificial intelligence, supply chain, and project management. We live in some trying times, as we're finding out, since this is now a digital presentation, but maybe that'll be the future of all presentations. Let's face it, technology is taking over for us, and that's why we wanted to talk about artificial intelligence. So without further ado, let us introduce ourselves. Robert?
Okay, I'm Dr. Robert Gordon. I'm with American Public University in the capacity of a program director. I oversee the programs of reverse logistics, government contracting acquisition, and military management. I've had over 30 years of experience in supply chain management, primarily in the hospitality as well as with the shipping industries. And I have been involved for about 20 years in project management, implementing various systems as well as different processes, as well as implementing other matters of change in organizations.
Hi, and I am Dr. Wanda Curlee. As you see the alphabet soup behind my name, those are all Project Management Institute certifications. It just gives you some credibility about me being a project manager for over 30 years. I've done project management in various industries, IT, software, government, US government, what other areas? Just a vast amount of areas. I also am a program director for business administration at the American Public University. I would like to say that we're proud that we're a totally online university, so we did not have to transfer our students to an online program because of the coronavirus. I am a veteran of the US Navy, as well as my husband. I have 3 grown children, and I'm proud to say that they all have served in the US military. 2 are still active duty, 1 is out. Okay, so let's go on and start with this. Robert?
Okay, I wanted to start by talking a little bit about artificial intelligence and the different areas that are already impacting our lives on the supply chain side as well as on the project management side. We've seen a lot of things already currently in use regarding decision making. For example, there are various programs that have a back end of artificial intelligence that will make recommendations to you about sales, about other things you might be interested in. Some companies and organizations are also going to add things to your feed depending on what you've viewed and seen in the past. We have seen the growth and expansion of virtual assistants like Siri, Alexa, and Google. All of these are having a artificial intelligence backend in order to assist people in making decisions, as well as in finding information, as well as in just navigating throughout life in general. Another one is self-driving features of vehicles. This has been something that has been going on for quite some time, and we'll talk more about it later. But it essentially is kind of an artificial intelligence system, which is in a vehicle, which then allows it to drive without a human inside. Another area that we're seeing artificial intelligence is in automated grading. There are different organizations and even schools that are working with automated grading features in order to better serve the needs of students. All of these I see have applications within supply chain as well as within project management.
Okay, let's go on to the next one. Go on, Robert.
Great. Okay. Well, as I mentioned already in the opening about self-driving vehicles, I just wanted to point out that Rio Tinto, which is a mining company in Australia, has already 100 heavy trucks in use, all which are self-driving. The interesting thing to point out here is that this fleet of trucks was not something that was built specifically as a self-driving vehicle like the Tesla, but these are actual retrofits that were put onto existing heavy trucks in order to make them self-driving. So I'd like to point out that even though you see the headlines in the news about people building, vehicles with autopilot or self-driving features, this is an example that's already out there of one that didn't even go that route. They simply just engineered a normal vehicle to be self-driving. So to me, that's kind of an interesting direction to take, because if that is something that's possible there, imagine what could happen in the market in supply chain and in logistics, because any truck could then be converted over to be self-driving. This is like an area that I feel is quite interesting. The next one is robots. Amazon has been a big proponent and user of robots inside their warehouses. It's very interesting that they continue to expand that. Now, having said all that, and although they actually ended up buying a robotics company for the robots that they were using in their warehouses, they recently announced that they're looking for about 100,000 people to hire full-time and part-time on the logistics end, particularly in warehousing. So although certainly robots are taking some jobs, there's still other jobs that simply are still available. But again, this is today. In the future, I suspect we're going to see a lot more of this automation and robotics taking up these kind of lesser skilled positions. Also, another matter is with loading and unloading of trucks. Again, putting self-driving functionality on forklifts or other unloading of vehicles is another area in the supply chain that's having different AI applications. Obviously, you have to kind of program these units. Some of them are either like wire guided or line guided. However, there is a certain degree of artificial intelligence that needs to be programmed into them in order to handle certain situations. Another one I saw recently when I was in Europe was warehousing rows. I was at a company called Somac, and what they had done, instead of opening up and getting a larger warehouse, they actually put their warehousing, literally all the racks in rows, and put some kind of programming and automation into them, so that way they would close up when the aisles weren't being used, and they would open up when the aisles needed to be used. And this is all like done with sensors and remotely. It's not like they had to push a button. These things were like moving around all over the place while we were touring the facility. So it was very interesting to see. And there was enough artificial intelligence programmed into it where it kind of knew when someone was coming to take stock out. It would then open up for the period of time necessary to get them in. It was also kind of entertaining to walk up to them and then watch them move out of the way to let you walk in and then get out. So it was something that I had not seen. Probably there are other companies that do that, but I see that as something that's happening a lot more. Another area is like unmanned ships, putting like the artificial intelligence of a captain into a vessel. Although there have been some long distance tests already done on this, this is something that is undergoing testing, but I suspect that it's going to happen in the future. The Navy is already has long distance unmanned AI operated vessels. So there are ones that they are currently operating that are out there. They have pretty much more in the testing capacity at this time. I wouldn't say that they are, there's a remote fleet out there yet, but certainly there's a number of them undergoing testing.
Robert, just as an aside, the U.S. Navy has just put an unmanned ship out there for testing.
There you go. Well, I'm not surprised. They're on the commercial side. They've been doing it, so I kind of figured the Navy would be following suit. I knew that they had underwater unmanned vessels out there. I was unaware that they had one that they were fully testing at this point, but that's good to know. Port of Los Angeles is already having unmanned cranes, those heavy cranes that take the containers off ships. Last count, they had about a dozen of these that were simply working round the clock to help unload container ships out of the Port of Los Angeles. That was a very active area because that is a union port. So there was a lot of discussions and negotiations with the union regarding this because there were concerns about loss of jobs. And in addition, these cranes, they work 24 hours. So now you have a system and a process that is, can operate much longer than a typical human could and not take time off for holidays, not take time off for vacation, medical, etc. And so it's interesting to see that even the port system and infrastructure for the supply chain is really kind of taking off in this direction. Okay, can we get the next slide?
Yep, it's there.
Thank you. All right. Okay, so So that's a lot of what I consider like the hardware changes that are happening on the supply chain and artificial intelligence. And now I kind of wanted to talk a little bit more about things what I consider like more of like just more software type or more intelligence driven type changes. For example, IBM is advertising and a big proponent for the Sterling supply chain, where they will then utilize their existing artificial intelligence as a back end to support organization supply chain, to run analysis, to help with forecasts, to help with suggestions, to better automate and streamline a supply chain, as well as to be able to monitor it 24 hours a day. So there's a lot of potential in that. I saw that they have a white paper out there. I have not heard of any companies that have gone into it fully. I know that there's some testing happening, but I suspect that this is something that's definitely going to be, you're going to see more of this in the future. Another one that's regarding supply chain that I also think is very relevant with project management are chatbots. And, you know, most people get kind of turned off by chatbots because, you know, it's talking to an artificial intelligence and how does it know? But there's a lot of different applications that I feel that happen. What I always think is great is, you know, the question, you know, and Amazon is very savvy to this about where's my stuff? Where's my stuff? You know, that's why they love to update you and keep you totally updated, because they know if you're updated and you know where to find it, you don't ask. So that's where I see where chatbots a little bit more helpful, because now you can have a little bit more than where's my stuff. You can ask it complex questions about where exactly is it, what's going on with it, as well as for a procurement manager or a project manager, a chatbot's great because you could then program a chatbot with all the information about a project or about a procurement or a program, and then people can just interact with it to get updates and get information rather than having to take that call from some stakeholder that wants an update. Another area, for example, with supply chain is on the area of forecasting. This is something that is part of the IBM Sterling supply chain, is improved forecasting. Obviously, the typical system now in most ERP systems is developing forecasting based upon the past and what your prior buys and spend have been. But the reality is, you know, it needs to have some more sophistication in artificial intelligence to take into certain accounts. For example, our current shortage of toilet paper. Not really sure if artificial intelligence might have seen that coming. However, it might have been able to better forecast that some of these emergency supplies would have been in higher demand and would have gotten the wheels of a supply chain moving faster to get these items onto the shelves. You also see artificial intelligence with suggested buying, you know, on Amazon and Google. If you've ever bought something there, they love to suggest, well, you know, other people who bought this also bought that. You also see it in web advertising. If you've ever, you know, touched some things and looked at some things on the web to buy, then suddenly they show up in your feed or in like pop-ups advertising them, as well as with marketing. Artificial intelligence has already been very effective in the marketing arena. Okay.
Okay. Next slide.
Yeah. All right. So at this point, I want to talk a little bit about future uses of the supply chain. You know, again, I see artificial intelligence as becoming a supply chain manager in the future. It's something that, you know, there's a lot of the functions that a supply chain manager has when it comes to communication or updates that really could be handled by artificial intelligence, as well as being a tool to help people for forecasting the future. I see when I look beyond auto replenishment, you know, it's no longer a matter of, okay, well, the stock went off the shelf. The system automatically replaces that item. It needs to kind of have an understanding of what the future forecast is going to be and not just based on the past. As I mentioned before, forecasting for natural disasters when these kind of incidents happen. I know, for example, in Florida with the last hurricane, you know, hurricane blast through, problems happen. Walmart was able to get their trucks in and get water back on the shelves the next day. I think it took FEMA about a week before they actually got things happening. And part of this artificial intelligence is actually accepting the reality of having forward positioned materials. Many times people are reluctant, or companies are reluctant to forward position materials in order to get them better to the sites they need to be, because it does appear wasteful if you don't. But the reality is you just need to do it. Because if you don't do it, the downside is you have problems. And then also just planning for world events. I suspect that artificial intelligence that's monitoring different information and data might have foreseen that, if everyone's talking about stocking up on toilet paper and the news keeps talking that you need to buy it and stores start restricting it, making it seem like you need it, well, maybe we should start taking those cues and program supply chains to better address those issues. Okay, and then I've spoken quite a bit, so I think Wanda's going to jump in now.
Yes, thank you, Robert. So we're going to shift a little bit to project management, and you're going to find that there's some overlap between supply chain and project management. It's because project management does use supply chain and supply chain uses project management, so you'll see some overlap. But let's get into artificial intelligence and project management. The areas that we're really going to discuss where I think artificial intelligence really touches project management is in decision making, risk management, scheduling, communications, and planning. And then we'll talk a little bit about future applications of artificial intelligence. Will we have an artificial intelligence project manager, or I like to see it more as an artificial intelligence manager, because it could be a manager for supply chain, it could be a manager for project management. So let's talk about decision making. Today's project, supply chain, whatever you're in, transportation, healthcare, there's vast amounts of data. Look at what's going on with the coronavirus now. There is so much data out there, and a human being or a set of human beings can't look at all of the data and come up with a coherent decision. Well, they could come up with decisions, but are they really the right ones? Artificial intelligence can assist us and support us and give us ideas of what decisions we need to make. So artificial intelligence could look at this vast amount of data of whatever it is and tell you these are the decisions that probably make the most sense. Now, you as the human being would have the ability to say, I need more information on this. Why did you come to this? Or you could say, I don't like any of those decisions. I'm going to make a different decision. But at least you have something helping you out. And you need to understand this so we can do it as well. Do we want to make artificial intelligence a part of brainstorming sessions? Of course we do, because it's been able to look at all of the data out there and come up with some ideas that probably nobody else has come up with. Can you imagine having a Google or a Siri sitting in your brainstorming session coming out with all these ideas? But I think that is the future. Now, maybe it won't be a Google or a Siri. Maybe it'll be a robot that looks like a human being sitting in there, but it's really artificial intelligence.
Hey, Wanda, if you don't mind, I'd like to jump in and add something that
Sure.
kind of supports, again, what you mentioned is already in healthcare, they're using artificial intelligence and taking big data to crunch the numbers, because, when human research scientists or a team of scientists, they're analyzing the data, there's only so much that they can take. But what has happened recently is they've used it to supplement researchers, and researchers were looking at one correlation, is this medication addressing, the needs of certain things? But then the artificial intelligence came around and also noticed other correlations when it came to ethnicity of people and having certain connections to, the people of these ethnic origins are having better or worse results with this medicine, as well as with other reactions. I've already seen some preliminary data on the coronavirus saying, they're starting to draw different correlations about, there's questions about, why are there fewer cases, on the other side of the world, like down in Australia and New Zealand, rather than up here, where we are in U.S. and Europe. The question there has been, do they have less contact? Is it that they are already perhaps more dispersed because there's fewer people down on the bottom half of the planet rather than the top? So it begs certain questions, even when artificial intelligence is looking at the information and it brings up to light research that people wouldn't be looking at. For example, considering ethnic origins or regional areas. Why one hemisphere of the planet is reacting differently. So I see that all that's going to really show in project management, because it's going to alter decision making, because the more data and the more correlations you're presented with will result in different decisions being made.
Absolutely. Also, in another area is pharmaceuticals. They're finding the pharmaceutical industry are using artificial intelligence, and they're finding that when they're developing drugs, it takes them much less time than if they did it without artificial intelligence. I don't know the exact percentage, but I'm thinking it's somewhere between, it cuts down the time by 30 to 50%. Okay.
I'll be interested to see if they manage how they manage this coronavirus vaccine, because I'll guarantee they're probably going to utilize human scientists and artificial intelligence, because the situation is just so important, and to get it done quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. So going on with the decision making, you also have risk management, and decisions do have risks with them. And also, as a project manager, I have my biases of what kind of risks I look at and what kind of risks I really don't look at. And if you have artificial intelligence, it may start to understand you as a project manager and say, have you thought, and Siri or Google or one of those might say, hey, Wanda, have you thought about this risk? Because again, it's crunching all of the data, and I may not see that risk, or that might be a risk that I might put little emphasis on because I don't think it's that big of a risk. But when artificial intelligence goes back and looks at it, it says, that's really a big risk for these reasons. And then you can decide whether to put it on your risk log or not. It also goes with the decision making. It can tell you what kind of risks you are going to have with the different types of decisions you make. It will also support you with ongoing risk management. Did the risk occur? Why did it occur? How do we handle it if it does occur? And also, what are the secondary risks that come out of it? Did another big risk come out of the primary risk, and what do we need to do about it? So those are all the things we need to look at risk management. It can also look at the risks of your schedule. There's all kinds of things that you can look at for risk. Many people don't think about risk management in your schedule, but it's very important to look at that. So let's look at scheduling. There's various, I don't only mean your schedule. Think about all the meetings that you go to. Let's say you're going to visit, you have a meeting with the CEO and all of the C-suite, or you're going to middle management, or you're going to all your stakeholders. You have to arrange and schedule those meetings. That takes a lot of time, especially if you're doing it with people that are very busy, and we all are busy these days. So if you have a chatbot, or if you have artificial intelligence, it can go out there and put the schedule and meetings together. It can tell you of any scheduling conflicts. Let's say you've got one person that you just can't schedule in there, or you're getting ready to go talk to somebody and just off the cuff, artificial intelligence say, hey, can you wait about 30 minutes and then go talk to them? They should have some time. One of the big things that we talk about on schedules, when you're developing your schedules, is the critical path. Well, artificial intelligence can tell you, do you really have the correct critical path? Again, the schedule is based on your biases, on the biases of the team, on the biases of people that are doing certain things. I know when I'm doing scheduling from software, I usually put about a 10% buffer in there, because I truthfully don't trust people that are developing software, because they always take longer than what you expect. If you have all the data out there, artificial intelligence can help you with that and say, yeah, this person normally tells you this, but it takes them 50% longer. So now you can put that in there and have that buffer, because you know that person does this. It's not saying anything bad about the person, but I may not have known that because I may have never worked with that person. But if all the data is kept within the organization, then it can go out there. There are actually some project management tools out there that are now in the cloud. They can interface with all of the data that the company wants it to interface with. So it should be able to interface with all previous projects that it has done. And you can bring all that data into your project. Can you think about how powerful that is, especially if you're doing construction, if you're doing software, if you're doing IT, all kinds of things that can relate to all of that. So let's switch over to communications. It can write and send status reports because it has all the information out there that you've inputted into various different software tools. It can bring them out and do that for you, which is a godsend, because a lot of times I'm chasing people to find out what the different things are for the status reports. Artificial intelligence can do this by using chatbots, by going out to the person, reminding them, sending them an email, telling them, hey, you haven't responded to this, we need this. It also can go out to them and say, hey, you haven't entered your time for the week, or you need to update these risks. So it keeps everybody on their toes and keeps them going. There's also artificial intelligence that can develop your PowerPoint. It gets to know what you like on your PowerPoints. So it can start developing it for you and actually create your first and second drafts. If you don't like it, of course, you can always go back and change it. But can you imagine if the artificial intelligence starts to know your quirks about meetings, and it develops those PowerPoints for you? It can also identify where you might be lacking of communication. When I work on virtual teams, I like to contact everybody at least once a week, at least my team leads, depending how big it is. But there may be somebody that's never communicated with for whatever reason, and they're remote. It can get very lonely. So artificial intelligence can actually go out to them and ask them how they're doing, see what they need. Even if it's a chatbot, it's something that they're talking to. So it helps those people not feel that loneliness that can happen on virtual. And many people might be feeling that right now because most of us have gone virtual. So what are some of the things that we can use in planning around artificial intelligence? Again, as I mentioned in the scheduling area, it can see some of the scheduling issues far in advance, more so than we can. Remember, there's all kinds of data coming out of a project, and artificial intelligence will see the issue long before you do. So can you imagine if you know that you have a long lead item in supply chain, and you thought it was going to be here in the next 2 weeks, and you have it on your schedule, but artificial intelligence saw an email that said, hey, we're scheduled, we're behind schedule by 3 months, and you did not get the email, but somebody else did, and they forgot to tell you about it. Well, now artificial intelligence knows that, and it can warn you about it, and can actually give you what-if scenarios on your new schedule. Or you can go and talk to the supplier and see what you can do about it. It gives you what-if scenarios, like I said, and you can adjust it as you need to, and you adjust the timeline. You can crash a schedule. I don't recommend doing that very often, but occasionally we have to. We've probably seen in this coronavirus a lot of schedules crash for various reasons. If you have artificial intelligence, you can ask it to crash the schedule and give you the best opportunity for a successful crash. It can also look at budgets. It can tell you if you're overrunning your budgets as you have it against the schedule. It can also do CPI and SPI. Those are the things that we do in schedule performance index and cost performance index. It can do all of those for you automatically. You don't have to run the numbers. So it can tell you if you're overrunning. It can tell you how you're going to end up at the end of your project, and probably do it more accurately than I could because it's got more data. Remember, this is data driven, and everything has got a lot of data. So Robert, would you like to talk about managers of the future and artificial intelligence?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I feel that artificial intelligence is going to develop and evolve at a different company level. For example, IBM's artificial intelligence is different than what is being developed at Google or Apple. And it will eventually then evolve into a product, what I consider like the 24-hour manager, where you can have a artificial intelligence monitoring a project or monitoring a supply chain or monitoring various functions within an organization on a 24-hour basis. As you know, with a project, if it's happening worldwide, you may have people working in different time zones and different places. And so changes can happen quite quickly or even overnight. You know, when I'm sleeping, someone elsewhere is working on the project, and I might not realize that we're falling behind or something is wrong until much later. An artificial intelligence would be able to monitor and understand and then be able to take action that would help support the project or the supply chain. Because it would be reviewing these contingencies and alternatives. You know, by doing so, when something did happen, for example, let's say there's delays in shipping on the supply chain, it might look at alternative things. You know, recently with this outbreak of the coronavirus, there's been different impacts that have happened in shipping, and different ship operators are struggling to maintain ships. I saw recently that Maersk has taken the initiative to stop having crew changes for the next 4 weeks. I see that Guam has restricted people from being able to enter there only if they have proof of not having the coronavirus, which I think is hard to do when you're healthy because there aren't enough test kits. I've also been seeing other changes that are occurring. So an artificial intelligence that's able to monitor all this can be reviewing these risks and working with contingencies and figuring out things to what actions to take in real time and without delay. You know, it would understand that if something changed over in the Far East in the middle of the night here, it would already have an action to be taking once that we woke up and were able to do something, or took that action and just tell us about it in the morning and what it did to take care of the situation. So that's where I see the future of artificial intelligence as that manager. It's going to become that helpful assistant beyond just, you know, telling me where the nearest coffee place is. It's going to be taking and truly making those management decisions. We could hit the next slide, Wanda.
Sure.
And this is going to lead to some ethical issues because now we're going to start having some problems because now we have an artificial intelligence that's working all the time. You know, we're going to have ethical issues when it comes to, well, is this going to replace people? Is it going to be responsible if something goes wrong? Or can you fire your artificial project manager and the project fails? Or do you find a new one? Do you, you know, what are you going to do? You know, it's able to keep working and doing these things. And then, of course, always the big question, what happens if in the project or in the supply chain someone gets hurt or harmed or worse, they're killed because of actions taken by this artificial intelligence. You know, we're already seeing it with self-driving vehicles. I had read that Mercedes, you know, with their self-driving initiative, they were asked very directly at one point and said, well, okay, well, what will your self-driving feature do? Like, you know, well, if, you know, the car is now speeding towards a school bus, does it go off the cliff and kill the driver, or is it going to, you know, run the school bus off the cliff and have the school bus go tumbling down? And Mercedes had an interesting answer, which was, first and foremost, they said they are there to protect the lives of the driver and the individuals in the vehicle, which then can lead to some interesting ethical conundrums because, you know, is the life of the one driver, you know, now going to potentially endanger more people? You know, will the vehicle decide to take that action that might harm more people but save the driver? And this becomes to an ethical issue of now, well, then who's responsible? Is it the human who is in the vehicle but not driving? I've also seen that some states are looking at, you know, having driverless vehicles and allowing them to go. So what then? You know, it offers some interesting questions for a project, for a supply chain, and it'll be interesting to see how it pans out. We can hit the next slide. And then the question there now is, now that we know that there's potential ethical issues and the potential 24-hour work time, is there going to be a need for human oversight? You know, what's going to happen? And then will the human be able to override the opinion of the machine based on their own experience? You know, it becomes a question. It's artificial intelligence may have the knowledge and effective experience of, you know, hundreds of different project managers or different supply chain managers. And now will one person be able to override that based on their own experience and knowledge? And then if so, then, you know, is that a good thing or is it bad? The other thing is artificial intelligence is only as good as the data it gets. You know, if the data that was programmed or put into the thing are not indicative of the situations that are evolving, there can be a problem, you know. And then, as I mentioned before, there's going to be multiple competing artificial intelligence projects. You know, it's going to be different companies that will have. I envision that you'll see something that will be backed by large companies like IBM, Google, Apple, will all have their own, you know, just like everyone has their own personal assistant, either on a phone or on their device, you know, that allows them to have that virtual assistant do things for them. You'll see this same kind of thing with these artificial intelligence, you know, entities.
Yeah, Robert, it kind of brings me back to having subcontractors on a major project, and they may have an entirely different project management software. Do you force them to use yours, or do you let them use theirs, and with hoping that it will interface with your artificial intelligence? So while the technology is changing, we still have the same problems.
Agreed. You know, the same integration issue is going to happen. You know, it's like, you know, and then as you know, taking it at a different level, if you're a program manager managing multiple projects, are you going to have the same artificial intelligence entities assisting with each of them, or do you play to the strengths? You know, for example, you know, maybe something developed by Amazon is going to have better supply chain understanding because they do supply chain so well, rather than maybe something developed by IBM that might be more regarding large data and thinking and problem solving, you know. So you may want different ones and based on the project, and they may or may not integrate to one another. You know, just like, you know, Alexa and Siri pretty much don't talk to each other. I'm not envisioning that these companies are going to develop ones that will overlap. They will want you to use their product rather than products of someone else.
Absolutely. Yep. You ready for the next slide?
Yep. So this pretty much is wrapping it all up. And what does the future hold? You know, in the end, artificial intelligence is not going away. As a project manager or supply chain manager, you really need to look into it and start moving towards it. Trying to get away from it isn't going to happen. So you might as well be able to work with it and be on that cutting edge, so to speak. And it's something that's going to be very interesting. You know, for example, you know, there's already applications on the good and bad. You know, China's already developing artificial intelligence drones designed to kill people on the battlefield. You know, I know at one point there was a discussion, I could believe, at the UN about trying to ban drones, you know, artificial intelligence type drones that kill people. But the problem is the minute you start talking about banning is the minute that people start rushing to build it, as far as I can tell. But, you know, it's going to happen, and it's going to happen, you know, in different places. I don't think China's going to corner the market in that area, but there are different applications for it that are happening. And then the question is, you know, will project managers and supply chain managers be replaced? You know, will teachers and surgeons? You know, I suspect not. You know, I've been hearing, you know, the computer was going to replace supply chain managers for a long time. I've heard that, you know, other software was going to replace project managers, and I still haven't seen it. I'm also waiting for that paperless society that they talked about when we made computers. So
yeah,
I might be waiting a while.
Yeah.
So,
although they say that surgeons might be replaced by robotics, which is a type of AI.
Yes, and that's entirely possible. But I think it's going to be in specialized areas. And the other thing that always fascinated me, because I don't have a huge knowledge of physiology, just the small stuff I took in college. But I didn't realize that everyone's insides are totally different. Like, we aren't quite as cookie cutter as people want to believe,
Right.
And so I'm like, well, you need to have a kind of a very skilled and knowledgeable individual or artificial intelligence to handle this kind of variety, I would think. It's not like, everyone's appendix is exactly in the same spot. So, building a artificial intelligence that kind of needs to know that and finesse that. I think it's possible, of course, but I'm not sure if that's necessarily the same thing. And also with teachers, there's many schools of thought in teaching theory and how to teach, and there's different techniques and manners to teach. But no one really knows exactly, like, the best way or the one way that people learn. And I think the reality is that people need it in a few different ways in order to be successful, or at least in general. And so, again, artificial intelligence replacing teachers, I think that we'll see that. I see it certainly in both surgeons and teachers, project managers, supply chain managers, and a bunch of other areas. Will definitely increase and assist and improve people. Just so you know, this was a bit of trivia that about, I don't know, I think it was about 5 or 6 years ago, a robotic and artificial intelligence hotel opened up in Japan, and they had about 100 of these interactive robots doing different things, from check-in to handling questions to being a concierge, et cetera, et cetera. And last I saw, after several years, they fired about 80% of them because it turned out people really were not. I think after the novelty of it kind of wore off, they really found that it wasn't as good. The service never was as good. And maybe the technology wasn't as advanced as it could have been. It could have been other things. But, I see that these jobs in the service industry, people talk about automation replacing them. But in the end, I see that it fills in a space, and it certainly supplements, and it certainly can help. But I'm not sold on the fact that our children are going to need to totally be worried about, being replaced in the future.
I totally agree. I think it'll just be different jobs that we haven't even envisioned yet.
Agreed.
Okay. Oh, well, I want to thank everybody for watching our video. If you have any questions for us, we would love to send you some answers, our opinions, or we can base it on what we found in literature. Here you have our email addresses, and we would love to hear from you. Thank you again. Robert, any last words?
No, thank you, everyone. Appreciate your time and patience. Take care. Good luck. Hang in there.
Yep, same here. Thank you. Bye-bye.